When I think back on all the fears when I was pregnant, all of them dismissed except for one. The only test the state mandated was genetic. Looking for that extra chromosome. Hello, and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast.
I'm Steven Sachs,
And I'm Lori Sachs.
and today we are joined by early interventionist and child development specialist Caroline Bencze-Fernandez. We were really fortunate to benefit from her expertise as a member of Liam's early intervention team. Caroline, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Can you just tell everybody who's listening a little bit about yourself and also what is early intervention?
My name is Caroline Bencze-Fernandez, and I am an early intervention specialist or child development specialist. I've been doing it, I think, for 30 plus years now. And basically, early intervention is working with children birth to 3 who have a developmental delay or at risk for a delay. So children maybe who are born premature, or children who are prenatally exposed to drugs, or children who are born with Down syndrome. We come in there and we work with the family as a whole to maximize their child's development and get him going on learning.
Why is early intervention important?
I think it's important for all children, to be honest, but for children who maybe already have delay, it really to get that child on target to enhance or maximize their development so that they could be able to possibly go to preschool by the time they're 3 or go to kindergarten. It's just really just to work with a child, make sure they're meeting their milestones, and work with the family as a whole. It's not really catch up, but more maximize their development. Every child's different. So, working on certain areas. We have the cognitive, the social emotional, the speech, physical, gross motor, fine motor. There's all kinds of areas we could be working on. And so, monitoring that and having the family kind of learn to work on all those areas as well throughout the child's day or, through their routines of their home.
How has the inability to go into the home affected the way that you provide your services and supports?
It's working out. I'm doing a lot of FaceTime or, some people are doing Zoom with the families weekly, and it's actually working out. It's a lot more prep work for me. So I'm kind of going through each family and kind of writing down where the child is, some developmental milestones, and then I come up with 3 suggested activities they can work on each week pertaining to their child is doing. And it's great. So I usually follow up with them through email or text. I ask families to send videos, and then we also just do a live FaceTime with the baby and myself, and I'll sing songs, I'll show them animals. It's actually kind of working. I mean, I do miss going into the home, but it's going pretty well, I think. Some families do miss me coming in, and, being there live, but I think temporarily it's okay.
I think in that way it works. Some other things it's harder to teach via Zoom.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, a lot of it is I'm sending pictures and kind of coming up with activities of things that they have in the home to work on whatever their goals are. Like, let's say stringing, but they don't have anything to string with. So I'll come up with let's cut up some toilet paper rolls and get a string and put masking tape on it. And let's work on stringing that way. So I'm trying to be a little more creative. And it's kind of going back to how early intervention used to be. We used to just go into the home and kind of work with whatever the families had in the home. So it's kind of goes back and forth sometimes that way. It's going okay.
Do you find that you need more of the parents to be hands-on in this situation?
Definitely. And it's making me realize I really should be, because me going in there, it's a little easy for me. I go in there, the families are sitting there with me, they're involved, but I'm not really, I was just sort of showing them what to do. But now I'm being a little bit more specific. No, I actually need you to do this week. Families are definitely having to be more hands-on. I think it's kind of been good for them. Early intervention is sort of not me just coming in and doing it all, but it's really working with the whole family and having them kind of also following through as well. With what I'm doing, because I can't just do it all by myself. So it's this. That's why I love early intervention, by the way. It's because I get to work with the whole family as a unit. It's not just the child and myself.
Well, I have to tell you that one of the things that I'm seeing, at least right now, in the situation that we're in, being home and out of school, is all of that early intervention when you would come in and work with Liam and I'd be there and we'd be working with him together. Now I'm seeing such a benefit of those times because as parents, we're having to work with our kids. And I'm finding that I snap back into that mode of just doing the work. And this is what we're going to do. So not only are you teaching these kids skills and giving them a foundation, but it also gave me a great foundation to snap back to.
And she's modeling for the parents.
I'm glad. I'm so glad, because sometimes I feel like I have to remind myself. I get so zoned in to working with the child. I'm like, whoa, wait, I need to really include my parents a lot more. It's really it's a good reminder for me right now during this time working at home. I really need to incorporate the families even more so, So anyway, but thank you. I'm glad that that's been coming in handy, especially now that you're both your kids are at home.
In your 30 years of experience, have you seen a change in early intervention from when you started to today?
Yes, definitely. I have to say, 30 years ago, I felt like it was a lot more of just the teacher and the child. I actually, back 30 years ago, I taught children, well, so 1, 2, and 3-year-olds with special needs in a classroom. So parents were not really involved that much. As the years have changed, it's really getting parents involved. And now it's definitely, even those center-based programs that are out there, parents are now kind of having to stay and be a part of that in the birth to 3, the population. I'm not saying 3 to 5-year-olds, but the birth to 3 population, parents are really encouraged to be involved, because it really takes the whole family, and everybody involved, not just the one therapist coming in to do, working with the child, but, having the whole family work with the child as well. So I think it has changed. It also, I think we talked a little bit earlier about, used to be, it keep going. It goes back and forth. We therapists bring in their bag of toys and we work with the child, and then we take those bag of toys, and then so it's really important. I think sometimes too. I think what's changed is sometimes going in without your bag of toys and kind of just seeing what the family has and kind of trying to figure out what they could do at home with the child. Using what they have as well. So that always sort of seems to shift. There's therapists who bring their bag of toys, there's therapists who don't, and there's a combination. I think a combination is great, to be honest. But yeah, so there's been some changes, and I think it's getting better, especially with the things we're learning now, and us helping the families more. I think it's getting better.
What kind of things are you learning that are helping?
Now I think I'm really involving the whole family, as opposed for, back 30 something years ago, it was just, I worked with the child and that was it. So now I just feel like I'm learning more from the family and what their concerns are as well. I think that has really improved and gotten better. And I think that's sort of helped me along the way, is to make sure we work all together with the family.
And for parents out there that are in California and have a child with Down syndrome, when that child's born and you get the diagnosis and regional center, you contact regional center, is it pretty straightforward that you will be kind of the first stop for services for that child?
So yes, usually someone may go out and do the assessment part, someone from regional center, but then the child development therapist or early intervention therapist would be the first to go out there. And then from there, usually what happens is, a physical therapist may come on board, occupational therapist maybe later down the line, and later down the line, possibly a speech therapist. But yes, the child development therapist is usually the first one through the regional center.
At what age do your therapies start? What age should parents expect this kind of help?
It is birth to 3. So if your child is born with Down syndrome, I would say as soon as you can. That's just my philosophy. Now, let's say you don't know. I mean, sometimes children don't exhibit any delays. As soon as you find, if you, as soon as you feel like there's something not right and your gut tells you, then as soon as you can is basically. I've worked with babies starting at 6 weeks old, premature babies. It used to be that right away we would go in straight away to any baby who's premature. Now it's a little bit different. I think maybe with budget cuts, they just sort of wait to make sure, maybe the baby is not going to have any delays. But I always say earlier the better.
What do you find the family's concerns are?
So a lot of times I'll come into the home, and let's say it's a child maybe with Down syndrome, and I've come into the home and they've already been heard by maybe other professionals on what their child is going to be doing or is not going to be doing. And so some of the concerns that the families are having is that their child is this age and is not doing what they're supposed to be doing at that age. Let's say they're supposed to be standing at this age and they're not doing that. So those are a lot of their concerns. And I'm trying to go in there to show them, look, your child, let's look at not what the book says over here, what your child's supposed to be doing, but let's look at John right here. Right now, he's almost kneeling, but you know what? Let's just focus on what's the next step. Okay, the next step is pulling to stand. So basically, their concerns are their child's not doing what the other children are doing at a certain time. And I always try to say, let's see what he's doing now. So I think a lot of their concerns are always comparing their child is not doing what the other child is doing at a certain age.
That was I think, a milestone for me as a parent was to be able to just, I'm not going to look outside my blinders. I'm just going to be right here. Because they tell you not to, with Sophia, well, don't compare her. She's going to get there. She's going to. And I always try to encourage parents that that's with every child, a neurotypical child or a child with Down syndrome or whatever challenge that they may have. They're who they are, and that we can support them to reach their potential.
Right. Yeah, I know. Because, there's developmental milestones that children, go through, and it's at a certain age. So a lot of times I discuss with my families, let's try to see where he is, not his age, but where he is now, looking more at the sequence of milestones achieved rather than at the age. So just like keep going from there. So kind of pointing out where they are and going from there. And yeah, trying to, I think what Lori said earlier, putting blinders on and not trying to see, oh, but this child is this age, he is sitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, be in the moment.
Be in the moment. Yeah, exactly. And just going from there. Like a child with Down syndrome, they'll be reaching that milestone, but it might be a little bit later than what the milestone, what it says that the age is doing. But I just like to see, as long as the curve is going up, right? As long as we're going to the next step. Nope, now he's sitting almost on his own. Nope, and then the next step he's sitting, as opposed to, oh, he's like 9 months and he's not sitting yet. But like, oh, but you know what? Look how far he's come. He's now sitting, leaning on, the pillow or something like that.
Maybe just talk about how you feel and your opinion on how a parent can deal with some of the feelings of milestones and judging themselves, and because can be a stressful situation for parents, having a child that maybe has a disability, or you're not sure, and how's this going to work out, and then you come in, and I know you probably run into parents that have all across the spectrum feeling different things, and maybe you could give a little advice to parents out there that may have the stress and worry.
I know my goal is always, when I go into a family, is just really, let's look at the child's strengths. Let's see where he is right now, and let's go from there. So I think it's important for families just to look at what your child is doing. Look at right now, he might not be reaching for that rattle, but look how he's smiling at you. And let's see if we could help him reach that rattle. And let's go from there. And let's try just to write down and see from week to week what he's now doing, like finding any little thing. I mean, I've worked with families who have children with multiple disabilities, visually impaired or hearing impaired. So they're feeling like their child's not doing anything. But then I would go in there and I would just look at the child and he'll smile. I said, "Oh my gosh, look, he looked at me and he smiled." Just finding whatever it is that child is doing and then elaborating and going from there. I think that's the key, is stop comparing, which I know is hard, but finding what he likes, what he dislikes, and what he's doing, and then just taking that strength and moving forward. I think the key to learning too is finding out what your child likes, and then whatever that is. So I always ask families when I first kind of go see them, what does your child like to play with? Sometimes they're like, "Oh, he doesn't like to play with anything." I'm like, "Oh, well, what does he do?" He's like, "Oh, well, he does, like this one particular toy over here." I was like, "Great, what can we do with that? And let's see, can we add another toy to it? Can we have them maybe bang on a toy?" Just taking whatever the child is doing or what his strengths are, and then just moving forward with that. I mean, that would be my advice to families, is just looking at what your child is doing and then just keep moving forward, um, you know, to see what the next step will be.
But not all strengths come across as a strength. I remember being concerned about Liam talking to himself and babbling. Was that something that was a milestone, or was that something to be concerned about? And tell us why babbling and talking to yourself are so important.
Yeah, actually, as babies, as they, at first when they're born and for the first few months, it's sort of a lots of vowels and oohs and ahs sounds. And then as they get older, it becomes a little bit, there's some more double consonants, a little bit of a ba, or some b's, d's, p's, and then ba, 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 da, da, da. So why babbling's important? It's a good indicator of their expressive language for later on. So, usually if I'm working with a baby and I do hear lots of babbling back and forth and sounds, it's usually a pretty good indicator that, his talking later on it's going to be coming along. If I don't hear any babbling, then, sometime, at the time that they're supposed to be, and closer, to a year or so, then, there could be things just like, ear infections or things, some things could be like they just can't hear very well or things like that. But anyway, babbling is actually sort of like it's a pre-talking skill. So if they're able to babble, it's kind of the beginning of talking. And then, talking to yourself is just part of development. I think, babies tend to also babble to themselves, and as they get older, and they have more words, and then they can sit and pretend play and kind of talk to themselves. It's part of development. And it's great practice for them just to continue using the words, using the sounds, and pretending and imitating others. Yeah, so I do think it's important. And I think also what's really important is to kind of have that turn taking of babbling back and forth. If the baby's doing a ba, then you do the ba and see if he'll imitate you. And then, you could kind of switch it up. Oh, he said ba, you're going to do da, and see if he kind of imitates that. So yeah, so I do think, it's important, babbling, and it's part of development for babies, up to a year, and then starting to use more words, and then talking goes from there.
Well, I remember there was a little concern with Liam about his ears. He had some ear infections, but he ended up getting tubes in his ears, but not real early. I mean, I remember getting a little cocky inside saying, "Oh, he's still doing well," as we went to the ear doctor. But we then did get to a point where we went to doctor, and we had a kind of a soundproof room that we sat in with Liam and tried to test his hearing. And I didn't realize how just the fluid in his ears and that kind of muffled sound, how that would affect his speech.
Right. And once the tubes are in, my son had tubes as well. Boy, it starts coming then, because what they could be hearing, obviously you would say Liam and he would turn, but he probably maybe heard a lots of blah, 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 kind of, muffling, like not clear words. So that does affect language. I mean, my son had numerous ear infections up until a year and wasn't, talking as much. And then once the tubes came in, it made a difference. But his expressive language was a little bit behind. But you know what? Then they catch up, or, they start talking, and they're able to hear a lot better. Because that's really, to learn to talk is really listening too, us dialoguing and reading to them, and then them listening, being able to hear us, right, is really important.
I remember, actually, I've talked to several parents of children with Down syndrome, and a majority of them their child has had tubes put in at one point. And I know it's probably a higher percentage of Down syndrome children just because the narrowing of the earway. But like you said, with your son, it is a typical thing, not something to be worried about. It is something that happens to any child.
Right. And I know it's scary because I'm not sure with Liam, but from what I remember, my son had to be put under, and that is scary to get the tubes in. But I have to say it's just well worth it, because the tube, what that does, it drains all that liquid out, and then they're able to hear us more clearly.
Yeah, I believe it was a outpatient surgery technically, but he was put under.
That scares parents, and I totally understand. My son was a year. I think Liam might have been older, because I actually don't remember that with Liam.
He was a bit older.
Okay, yeah, it's scary either way, but it's outpatient, and it was very much worth it. My son now, is talking, and Liam obviously is using his language, and so it's a good thing.
I do remember that the tubes were very scary, just the potential of surgery and all that embraces, and also the reality of okay, here's a new challenge, and what is it gonna mean, and what will it be, and all these unknowns came to the surface, along with a lot of other unknowns that I had maybe pushed down. So I definitely wish I had known then exactly what the surgery was, and even though it was still a little scary because it is a surgery and there is anesthesia, but if I would have had some insight on this side that I have now on this side of it. So Caroline, the name of our podcast is If We Knew Then. Is there anything that you would like to share? And if you knew then?
Yeah, so I guess 10 years ago, my suggestions to the families maybe 10 years ago was a little bit more of, oh, well, at this age, he needs to just not do that, not have the bottle. It was just sort of, the book says, and my approach now, as I had kids and gotten older, is let's, what do you need to do to feel good? And, it's a slower approach, I guess it would be, to suggesting something. Let's say it's time to wean from the bottle. I'd be like, oh, well, let's just see, and let's check with your pediatrician. And it wouldn't be so like, you have to do this at now. It's like, what makes you feel good right now, and let's see how we could help that. I'm not sure if I'm making
No, that makes total sense.
It makes total sense.
That's how parents of a child with disability feel. They feel that they're not really allowed to just let it come as it comes, to relax and take a breath. And that's what our podcast is about, is that it's much easier if you have a typical child to just say, this is what I'm doing. I'm just kind of, hey, they'll get it when they get it.
And the world gives you permission to do that too. Because
if
you start getting hard on yourself as a parent, the social media, there's, people are like, hey, and I told Stephen the other day, one post was, you're fine. Your kid's not missing anything. They're going to learn it. They're not falling behind. And, there was a stream of people behind it going, that's right, relax, you don't have to do the homework. And I honestly wanted to throw up, because I'm like, no, I don't have that luxury. My child will fall behind. And if yours falls behind, people will say, pandemic, it's okay, you'll catch up.
They won't use words like regression.
They won't say regression. They won't say special day class. They won't say off curriculum. And if my child falls behind, that's the consequence. And I didn't say anything because I know that everybody's lifting each other up right now. And that's my That's the line I walk, and these were just other people trying to support themselves. But if you do have a child with Down syndrome, it's not you're not always given the same luxury, like you said. And so that permission that you give to hear it from just one person who shares your experiences or understands the challenges that you have, that's a gift.
It's life-changing. It's life-changing for the parents, and it's definitely life-changing for the child.
Oh, definitely.
So we thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That's great. I'm glad that, and it's just going to make me want to do even more.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.